Before we begin, this story involves a submarine disaster, the deaths of 98 sailors, and the recovery of human remains from the deep ocean. If any of that's something you need to step away from, we understand. This episode's narration is AI-generated. The research, writing, and editorial decisions behind every story are made with care for accuracy and respect for those involved. Summer, 1974. A point in the open Pacific, more than 1,500 miles from the nearest land. On the surface, a single ship, 618 feet long, painted industrial gray, registered to the richest recluse in America. Howard Hughes's company told the world the ship was out here to mine the ocean floor for metal. Lumps of ore, 3 miles down. That was a lie. Every part of it. Inside the hull, a set of clamshell doors the length of a building were sliding open. Below them, 3 miles of black water. And at the bottom of that water sat a sunken Soviet submarine with nuclear missiles still in its tubes. And the United States government had built this entire ship for one reason: to reach down and steal it. You're listening to The Unlit Room. Every story in here actually happened. That's the part that should scare you. New stories every day, Monday through Saturday. Today, a submarine that vanished with all hands, a ship disguised as a mining vessel, and the most expensive theft American intelligence ever attempted. The story starts 6 years earlier and 3 miles deeper than anyone could reach. On March 8, 1968, a Soviet submarine called K-129 sank in the North Pacific. 98 men went down with it. The Soviet Navy searched for weeks. They found nothing. The United States Navy found it in months. A network of underwater microphones had recorded the sound of the hull imploding. An American submarine, the USS Halibut, was sent to the coordinates, dragging a camera sled, nicknamed the Bat, on a tow cable through the dark. The photographs came back blurry, black and white. Analysts at Langley studied them under magnification for weeks. What held their attention was the forward section of the wreck, where 3 ballistic missile tubes sat, by all appearances, still intact. What those photographs showed was a problem, and an opportunity. Inside that submarine were nuclear warheads, Soviet codebooks, the cryptographic machines the Soviet Navy used to encode its most secret communications. All of it sitting more than 3 miles down, in a place the Soviets themselves couldn't find. In 1969, CIA Director Richard Helms approved a plan. They would not tell anyone the wreck had been located. They would steal it. The Deputy Director for Science and Technology, a man named Carl Duckett, became the plan's champion inside the agency. He argued the recovery was technically possible. The project got a code name, I-ZOR-E-UN. And the man who would run every operational detail, from ship construction to crew cover stories, worked under a pseudonym the entire time. His staff knew him only as Mr. P. His real name was John Per Rang Gos Ki. The problem was that no ship on Earth could lift a sunken submarine through 3 miles of ocean. So they built one. Between 1970 and 1973, 2 American shipyards constructed the Hughes GLOH-MAR Explorer. 618 feet long, built around a hollow center, a cavity in the hull 192 feet long that the engineers called the moon pool. When the clamshell doors in the floor of that cavity opened, the open ocean was directly beneath the ship, and the cover story was a masterpiece. Howard Hughes, billionaire, inventor, by then a famous recluse no one could question, lent his name through his SUH-MUR Corporation. The public story was that Hughes was pioneering a new industry, mining the deep sea floor for metal nodules. Reporters wrote about it, competitors studied it. The entire performance existed to explain why a strange 600-foot ship was doing something unprecedented in the middle of the Pacific. It's worth sitting with the scale of the bluff for a second. The cover wasn't a fake company on paper, it was a real ship, with real engineers, a real budget, and a real industry conjured around it. Some of the civilian crew who sailed on the GLOH-MAR Explorer genuinely believed they were testing deep-sea mining equipment. They had no idea what was 3 miles below them. Micro Cliffhanger 1. By June 1974, the GLOH-MAR Explorer was sitting over the wreck. The moon pool doors were open. And the Claw, a steel assembly the size of a small house, had begun the slowest, most expensive descent in the history of espionage. They called the Claw Clementine after the old mining song. Its 3 grab arms were each about the length of a city bus, built to close around the submarine's hull from underneath and lock. Clementine hung from a string of steel pipe, assembled section by section over days and lowered through the moon pool, 3 miles of pipe, straight down, with the Claw at the bottom. Inside the ship was a windowless control room. The operators watched load sensors and sonar returns. After hours of numbers that didn't move, a subtle shift on the instruments told them Clementine had touched bottom. The arms closed around K-129. The lift began. 16,500 feet of water had to be reeled back, foot by foot. And somewhere in that climb, the submarine started to break. The hull had been on the bottom for 6 years. The steel was corroded. As Clementine took the full weight, 2 of the 3 grab arms failed. The aft 2/3 of the submarine, the section that held the ballistic missiles and most of the codebooks, the part they had built this entire machine to recover, tore loose and fell back into the dark. What reached the surface was the forward 38 feet of K-129. Not nothing, but not what they came for. $800 million in 1974 money. Adjust it forward and you're looking at something close to $5 billion today. At the time, it was the single most expensive covert operation American intelligence had ever mounted. And the most valuable part of the target was now lying back on the ocean floor, exactly where it had started. Micro cliffhanger too. But the forward section they did recover held something the CIA hadn't planned a press strategy for. Inside it were the bodies of 6 Soviet sailors. And what the agency did next was not in any mission file. There's a question the story keeps circling that has never been fully answered. What sank K-129 in the first place, and what exactly came up with that forward section? On the first question, there are competing accounts. The official Soviet and Russian position, shared by most Western naval analysts, is that the submarine was lost to an accident, most likely an explosion involving its liquid-fueled missiles, a known hazard of that class of vessel. The damage pattern in the halibut photographs is broadly consistent with that. A second theory, argued in the book Red Star Rogue and by some former Western intelligence officers, holds that K-129 was on an unauthorized mission ordered by rogue officers. Its proponents point to questions about the submarine's reported route. Most Western historians reject this, and Russia has denied it. There's no documentary evidence of any unauthorized orders, and on what was recovered, the agency has held to a single line for 50 years. Press accounts in 1975 claimed nuclear warheads were found. Portions of the recovery manifest are still classified. The CIA has never confirmed or denied the inventory. And as you'll hear, that exact phrasing is not an accident. The historians Norman Polmar and Michael White concluded the warheads were in the aft section that was lost. The honest answer is that some of this remains sealed. What isn't sealed is what the CIA officers chose to do with what they found. In September 1974, on the deck of the GLOH Mar Explorer, CIA officers held a formal burial at sea for the 6 recovered Soviet sailors. This was not improvised. Before the ship ever left port, agency linguists had prepared a phonetic script of the Soviet naval burial prayer in Russian in case bodies were recovered. Ceremonial materials consistent with Soviet naval tradition had been sourced in advance. On an overcast afternoon in the middle of the Pacific, an American intelligence officer read that prayer aloud in Russian. A recording of the Soviet national anthem played over the ship's loudspeakers. Caskets draped in the Soviet flag were lowered, one by one, into the sea. The entire ceremony was filmed, then it was classified, and it would stay classified for 18 years. The recovery stayed secret too, until it didn't. In February 1975, the journalist Jack Anderson broke the story. CIA Director William Colby personally called news editors, trying to hold the lid on. And as the agency scrambled to keep from confirming anything, its lawyers produced a sentence built specifically for this operation. We can neither confirm nor deny the existence of the program. That phrase had to be invented because the usual answers both failed. Saying yes confirmed the operation. Saying no was a lie that could be exposed. So they built a third answer that admitted nothing. It got a name, the GLOH-MA response, after the ship, and governments around the world now use it every single time they need to refuse to answer a question. It traces back, word for word, to this one theft at the bottom of the Pacific. In 1992, the CIA declassified key parts of Project Azor-E-Un and released the burial footage. And then the director of the CIA, Robert Gates, did something no law or treaty required of him. He had a copy of the burial film sent to the president of Russia, Boris Yeltsin. Along with it, he sent the precise coordinates of the wreck, so that Russia could finally know where the rest of K-129 and its crew had come to rest. For 24 years, the United States had known exactly where 98 Soviet sailors died, and said nothing, because the location was the most valuable secret of the operation. Now the operation was over. The agency that recovered 6 of those sailors had given them a funeral under their own flag, in their own language, and kept it hidden for 18 years. The Russian government acknowledged the gift in a single brief statement. They have never publicly discussed it since. One Russian officer who watched the burial film was reported to have wept. Project Azor-E-Un is usually told as a story about audacity. The ship, the claw, the Howard Hughes disguise, the most expensive theft ever attempted, mostly failed. All of that is true, but underneath the espionage is something stranger. The same agency that built a 600-foot lie to rob a war grave also paused, in the middle of that robbery, to bury 6 enemy sailors with full honors, and then, years later, quietly handed their country the map to the rest of their dead. The cynicism and the decency are both real, and they happened in the same operation, ordered by the same people. That's the part worth keeping. When a government can build a ship this size and hide it in plain sight, the question is never only what they've already done. It's what they're doing right now, behind a story you have no reason to doubt. If this one kept you up tonight, good. New stories every day, Monday through Saturday. Subscribe so the next one finds you too. Follow the Unlit Room wherever you listen. Tell a friend who can't sleep. Full story on the main channel. Follow if you're wide awake. That was the Unlit Room. See you in the dark.